A sigil is made by writing down whatever it may be that you desire, and then removing all vowels and repeating consonants. When this is done, rearrange the remaining letters into a symbol, and this symbol is your sigil. Remaining letters, after removal of the vowels and the repeating consonants from your word or spell, can also be mirrored and rearranged in a manner that incorporates the reflection. An example would be Dick Cheney ate my cat, and this would become DKHNM. This is what remains when all vowels and repeating consonants are removed. So at this stage you would take these remaining letters, stick a mirror underneath them, and draw your letters reflection underneath each of the corresponding letters. So DKHNM should then become something like this. Sigils should be created using capital letters. Sigil magic has been used by practitioners for centuries by alchemists and occultists. In medieval ceremonial magic training books, the term sigil was commonly used to refer to occult signs which represented various angels and demons which the magician might summon. Particularly well-known list is the Lesser Key of Solomon, in which the sigils of 72 princes of the hierarchy of hell are given for the magicians to use. Such sigils were considered to be the equivalent of the true name of the spirit, and thus granted the magician a measure of control over the beings. Sigils are commonly found in Jewish mysticism and Kabbalistic magic. So now we have at least a very basic idea of how sigils work. We can apply this idea to the word Quetzalcoatl and see what kind of sigil can be made. When all vowels and repeating consonants have been removed, we are left with this. And when mirrored to form a sigil, we have this. Now, it looks something like 833. So, first of all, the Q becomes an 8 with a little triangle pointing outwards. And as I touched on earlier, the number 8 is a symbol for immortality and the Ouroboros, the serpent that swallows its own tail, which was attributed to Quetzalcoatl, by the way, by the ancient Aztecs. Next, the Z becomes this, and this would appear to be the number 3 in reverse. Granted, it has extensions, but it resembles a 3 nonetheless. And last of all, but of course not least, the letter C becomes an obvious 3. Once again in reverse, which matters not in a sigil. So, flip both of the 3's around and you get this. Now it's 833, but mirrors when designing a sigil are optional. So the mirroring of the letter is not a necessity, it is optional, so Q can be left unmirrored while the Z and the C are still mirrored, thus giving us an obvious Q33. Although our exploration of the first character in the Wingding sigil, or Quetzalcoatl, is almost reached a conclusion, before we move on and discuss the next character in the sigil, which is 33, there are a few more areas that I wanted to touch on first regarding Quetzalcoatl before moving on. The Mayans described Quetzalcoatl as having blue eyes, long hair, bearded narrow face, tall in stature and Caucasian, like Jesus' image as portrayed by the church. Also, Quetzalcoatl was associated with the Sacred Heart, which can be seen in various pictures of Jesus on his chest. Quetzalcoatl was associated with the cross, which in turn became a sacred symbol to the Mayans, just like the cross is sacred to the Christians. Quetzalcoatl was born of a virgin and promised to return in the infinite future and redeem his people. In the Latter-day Saints movement, certain Mormon scholars believed that Quetzalcoatl was Jesus. Furthermore, it is said in Revelations 22, Jesus hath sent mine angel to testify unto you these things. In churches I am the root and the offspring of David and the bright and morning star. This quote links Jesus to the planet Venus and Lucifer, just as Quetzalcoatl is associated with Venus. In the 4th book of the Popol Vuh, it talks of how a majestic temple, all white, housed a black cubical dividing stone. Quetzalcoatl seems to mirror the biblical King Solomon in this regard, in that Solomon also built a temple. Furthermore, in the Popol Vuh, the temple and the black stone within the temple were named the Kabaha, which is almost exactly the same as the Islamic temple, or Kaaba, the black Saturnian cuboid structure housed at Mecca. To the Muslims, this black cube symbolises polarity, and since Solomon's temple was designed to represent the male within the female, or the hermaphrodite, it also for this reason symbolises polarity, and can be seen with the Seal of Solomon itself, which is the male within the female, which is also the occult symbol for the planet Saturn, linking Quetzalcoatl with all the aforementioned Saturnian symbols, i.e. the Seal of Solomon, the black cube. The planet Saturn is also, of course, the last planet before higher consciousness, in that it is seen as the seventh stage, or the seventh veil, and when this seventh veil is dropped, it is said that you see the god Pan, or Isis, or Christ consciousness. Before concluding, I would also like to point out that, like the Church's version of Jesus, Quetzalcoatl was also a solar god, and for this reason would seem to represent the so-called coming of higher consciousness, or spiritual enlightenment amongst mankind, the death of the old age and the beginning of the new age. And with that in mind, we can now move away from the Q in the wingding sigil and examine the next character in line, which is the number 33. So, the number 33 in the occult tradition is of quite some importance. As I've previously touched on, in the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life consists of 22 paths and 10 sephirah, each representing a different stage in your consciousness. The 22 paths, each represented by a tarot card, and 10 sephirah together make 32. So the next step on the tree is the non-sephirah, known as mystery, or sometimes the abyss, or darth. This spot on the tree is the spot represented by the number 33. At this stage, the adept symbolically dies, death of the ego is required, and is reborn at one with the all, or Pan, or Isis perhaps. This can be referred to as Christ consciousness. The Kabbalah teaches that the Messiah is a light that corrects the 32 paths of the heart upon Gemar Tekken. They teach that he is a pulling force from above. Orthodoxy teach that the Messiah is a flesh and blood man who assumed human form in order to unite man with divinity. Depictions of Christ, crucified on the Tree of Life, show his head on the 11th sephirah, or the 33rd when the 22 paths are also counted. It is said that Jesus started his ministry at age 30. His ministry lasted 3 years, until at the age of 33 he was crucified, and of course died on the cross and rose again 3 days later on Sunday. On the Tree of Life, this can be explained as lifting the seventh veil, moving through the Trinity, or Nox, otherwise known as the Night of Pan, representing the ministry that lasted 3 years, from ages 30, 31, 32, and then at the 33rd sephirah, when the 22 paths are counted, you symbolically die and are reborn. And before being born again at the light, you are in the womb of Babylon. At this time of being born again, you are illuminated. Thus the number 33 is the number of illumination, which it would seem is the reason for Christ being resurrected on Sunday. Sun, of course, represents illumination. In Freemasonry, the 33rd degree is the highest degree, or at least officially, attainable. So the basic concept is once again death, rebirth and illumination.